New York State correction officers and Governor Kathy Hochul reached a tentative deal in the Wildcat strike. This strike crippled correctional facilities in New York State. This video is meant to bring you this breaking news. Later on, we will be doing a deeper dive and learning what concessions were made and the impact it will have on inmates and correction officers. Stay tuned for that. This article is from the Times Union. Tentative deal reached in New York prison strike, but officers must agree. Governor Kathy Hochul's administration and union representing more than 13,000 correction officers reach a tentative agreement by Brandon J. Lyons. Albany. Governor Kathy Hochul's administration and the union representing more than 13,000 New York correctional officers reached a tentative agreement on ending an unsanctioned strike that has crippled the state prison system since February 17th to a person with knowledge of the matter. The execution of the deal reached Thursday evening after 4 days of mediation may be tricky because the strike was unauthorized. Its resolution could require the correction officers to individually accept the conditions and agree to return their jobs. The administration has already offered concessions to coax officers to return to duty. They included an increase in overtime pay for officers who have been working, promising no discipline for those who returned to work last week, and temporarily suspending provisions of a 2022 law that prohibits inmates from being held in solitary confinement for longer than 15 consecutive days. Correction officers have for several years complained that the law has emboldened misconduct and violence in the facilities, leading to increased assaults, including on staff members. The conditions created by the strike have been so dire that Hochul on February 19th activated more than 3,500 New York National Guard troops to augment security at understaffed prisons. By then, the strike had expanded from two prisons, Elmira Correctional Facility in Chemung County and Collins Correctional Facility in Erie County, to more than 33 sites. By Thursday, there were 6,700 troops assisting with prison security. A spokesperson for the New York National Guard said that troops have been assaulted during their deployment to state prisons over the past week. A spokesperson for the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision could not immediately say whether there have been any reported assaults of staff or inmates at any facility since the strike began. An emergency response team was dispatched to Groveland Correctional Facility in Livingston County on Wednesday, but corrections officials said that it was not due to an uprising or violence. Quote, there were no incidents or security issues at Groveland Correctional Facility yesterday, end quote, said Thomas Maley, a spokesperson for the department. All dorms are under control. Members of the department's Albany Correctional Emergency Response Team, CERT, were transported to the facility to assist and support the staff that are reporting for duty, along with the deployed National Guard members, with several incarcerated individuals who were upset about the changes in daily operations caused by the illegal strike by correctional officers. There have been no uses of force. The directive suspending elements of the law prohibiting long-term solitary confinement that was issued last week by Corrections Commissioner Daniel F. Marchicello III is temporary and intended only to help the limited number of correctional officers maintain control of prisons during the strike. That directive noted the suspension must be for, quote, exceptional circumstances that create a significant and unreasonable risk to the safety and security of other incarcerated persons, staff, or the facility. Accordingly, we are suspending the elements of the Humane Alternatives to Long-Term Solitary Confinement Act that cannot safely be operationalized under a prison-wide state of emergency until we can safely operate the prisons, the governor's office said in a statement last week. The Times Union first reported that state troopers began serving judicial orders on striking correction officers at their residences last weekend as they face the possibility of being arrested if they are held in contempt of court for not returning to work. The service of the court orders was a first step in enforcing a temporary restraining order issued by a state Supreme Court justice in Erie County last week in a ruling that found the striking workers are violating New York's Taylor Law, which prohibits walkouts by public employees. Earlier this week, striking correction officers occupying state owned housing at some prisons were given eviction notices by the Corrections Department. The notices gave the officers 15 days to vacate the premises and said it was due to their violation of the Taylor Law. The aggressive steps by Hochul's administration unfolded as the governor has scrambled to resolve the strike through mediation. Corrections Department sources said that some officers began returning to work Monday, but that thousands are still refusing to return to their jobs inside prisons that have limited staff members. A spokesperson for the department said that 200 officers had returned to work after striking. Striking correction officers were informed last week that they were not being paid and had been listed as absent without leave during their illegal work action. In addition, they were cautioned that their health insurance coverage was being terminated. It's unclear if that happened. In addition, those participating in the illegal job action will face administrative penalties, along with department discipline for violating the state's Taylor Law and a judge's temporary restraining order, Mealy said in a statement Saturday. But a concession by the governor's administration may be to not seek disciplinary charges against those who have taken part in the strike, something their union has pressed for during the negotiations. Pause. So we see the union, NYSCOBA, trying to negotiate that these officers go back to work, but they face no discipline for their illegal actions. Continuing on with the article. The governor's administration began reaching out to county sheriff's departments last weekend to check their available bed space, though county jails do not have enough capacity to hold the state prison population, and to gauge their ability to provide help with correctional emergency response teams. The correction officers in those units are trained to handle incidents involving violent acts and respond to uprising of large numbers of inmates. During the strike, attorneys for inmates as well as family members of incarcerated people have reported that in some prisons, including the maximum security Clinton Correctional Facility in Clinton County, inmates have not been allowed to shower or eating cold meals, not receiving medical care, and that violent incidents were surging. The governor also rescinded the provisions of a February 10th memorandum issued to prison superintendents by Martuscello that indicated staffing shortages had prompted the agency to redefine its work, and 70% of our original staffing model is the new 100%. That memo triggered a backlash from correction officers who contend they are underpaid, understaffed, and being forced to work mandatory shifts of 16 hours or more in unsafe conditions. 2 days after it was issued, Collins Correctional was locked down after officers retreated from inmate dorms for what a sergeant had alleged were unsafe conditions. The incident became a tipping point for correction officers who began strikes 5 days later at Collins and Elmira correctional facilities. A strike at Groveland State Prison began later that day. If you found value in this video, please like the video, share the video. Be sure to put your comments down below. I'd love to read your comments. If you feel that I've earned it, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. My goal is to give you honest and direct feedback and go deeper than what the mainstream media is telling you. Take care, be safe, God bless. See you next time.